I'm trying to figure out where I want to start.
Yeah, so let me think here. I actually ended up finishing a lot of shows that weren't specifically mine to talk about.
I got really close on some of them, like dreadfully close. I finished a lot of them though.
Yeah.
I don't think I finished anything that we weren't supposed to finish.
That's fair.
What a plebe.
I did not get around to finishing the Vatican Miracle Examiners, which I'm kind of upset about. I plan to watch that. I plan to finish that out at some point. But
yeah, me too. I just didn't quite finish it out.
There's a lot of shows this season that I really wanted to finish. And I just didn't even get started on some of them.
There were a lot that were super worth finishing.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, what happened to those wonderful days when summer was just kind of a one or two shows kind of event?
What do you mean wonderful days? These were wonderful days. This was great.
Wonderful Days? Is that like a School Days visual novel spinoff?
I was really happy that you weren't going to go the Golden Days route. Golden Time. Golden Days. What is happening to me?
Golden Time. We haven't mentioned that in a while.
I think eventually we may need to do a podcast on that. Because I don't know if we'll ever upload the shit in which we actually did talk about it. That was like podcast 2.
Yeah, we did briefly discuss it in podcast 2.
Oh, yeah, shit. That was before I was like...
That was before you were
really
fully functional.
On here. Yeah.
You were not a human being at that point.
I mean, like, you could argue I'm still not. But just depends on your...
you're a human being as long as you're on the podcast. That's the new rule.
Wow.
On the podcast, doesn't matter where you come from or if you're a dolphin or a rhinoceros. You're a human being when you're on the podcast. And you'll be treated as equal.
But see, Matt, there was this really interesting... there's actually this really interesting thought experiment that came up in Sagrada Reset.
Fuck you.
Did you all actually go all the way through that show? Okay.
Fuck no.
No, I don't even know. Like, I think there was literally 2 people watching it by the end. And I haven't even heard anything about it. Like, it disappeared off the radar.
I can't believe that show got, like, a fucking 2-core.
Yeah, I guess
all shows.
Of all things, it finished up this season.
It must be like some kind of like glass lippy territory, because like I didn't hear anything positive about it, but everyone was just like they got done with it and they're like, "Oh, I guess that was the show." There's a couple people that I heard about it anyway.
That's more than I expected. If we're being entirely honest.
Oh, I mean, but for a 2-core, like that's. Like, I hear that about 1-cores, but having that for a 2-core is, like, blasphemy.
Man,
just, like, going through a full 2-core and just being like, ugh.
Yeah.
I'm still sad that Marvel Future Avengers isn't getting a 2-core.
I don't even think that show's released.
Kyle. Shush your mouth.
Nobody even gives a crap about that.
Oh, come on.
Go watch any movie that's aired in theaters like the past 3 or 4 years.
I mean, you're not wrong.
I mean, like, look, if you really want some superhero shit, like, just get on board for Infinity Force.
I am on
for the
board
fall
for
season.
Infinity Force. I am so on board.
As of the time that we're recording this, it airs in like a fucking day and a half, and I'm so hyped.
Are you serious? Oh, it does. A day and a half. Look at that.
I'm so hyped.
Oh, I've got too much shit. Okay.
Yeah. But this is not the fall 2017 impressions podcast.
This is the end of summer 2017
wrap up.
So where do you want to start? Which one?
Man,
let's
let's see. We did 3 shows that we all watched together, right?
Did we?
Yeah.
Did we?
Isekai Shokudou, Princess Principal, and Tsurezure. All 3 of us finished those.
Oh yeah.
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 Okay, I thought you meant like there were 3 shows that we all decided, hey, we're gonna watch these, and that's our assignment for the cast.
Well, we were doing Isekai Shokudou and Princess Principal, but like I know that we all finished Tsurezure.
I guess quick poll: did y'all finish Gamers? Oh wait, God, you didn't watch Gamers.
No, he didn't watch Gamers. We'll talk about that later.
Okay, good.
I want to talk about Gamers later.
Okay. Yeah. Well, let's do something. Let's do something nice right off the bat. Let's just do like Isekai Shokudou, just one we all watch together.
Okay.
I love Isekai Shokudou.
Oh my gosh! If they don't make a second season of the show, I'm going to be the saddest man alive. It was such a genuinely enjoyable experience.
I try not to give out like 10 out of 10s willy-nilly for shows, because I feel as though it really sort of, devalues the actual quality of the piece. Like, I think I have maybe I have 9 things total that are a 10 out of 10 out of a list of like close to 200 or something, and it is one of them.
Wow, really?
I can actually understand where you're coming from, even if I don't necessarily give it a 10 myself, which I'm still considering. I understand where you're coming from, because it's not a show that like does amazing things as far as like just like amazing animation and like awe-inspiring plot or something. It's just it knows exactly what show it is. It delivers upon that show on every single beat, and it does it in a very nice package.
Exactly. Like, for me, the reason why I rate it so highly is that, for me, every week I watch the show, and every week I was actually consistently looking forward to it. I was excited to watch other shows and have their new episodes come out and such, but, no show this season actually had me consistently thinking, oh man, I hope it's a X amount of days until the new Isekai Shokudou drops. Like, it was the only one that I consistently looked forward to. And I realize, it's not perfect. It doesn't make like, any groundbreaking strides in how it does its animation or things of that nature. But for the parts that really count, it works hard. Like, I talked a bit about this in the post I put up recently,
which I love, by the way. That was such a nice idea.
Oh, shush, thank you. But the things that it really hits in on is that, to me, it has made a world that is so, like, it feels living and it feels really interesting with, the actual other world and the patrons of Isekai Shokudou that actually, consistently visit. And even though we don't sit down a ton with them, each episode generally focuses on a character that we haven't really got a lot of focus on beforehand, but altogether, seeing them all come back into the restaurant consistently and seeing how they interact with one another and really seeing the foods they fall in love with, it's like, I don't know, it was a very comfortable show in that sense, in that it's really working to develop this thing, and it does a really interesting job of putting it all together. Yeah.
I think for me personally, the 2 biggest strengths that I felt that this show had was that Isekai Shokudou does 2 things that I love. It was like, the first one is that it gave me a nostalgia for all of this food that I had eaten as a kid. Because, like, yeah, it had a lot of, like, really cool dishes that I've never had before. And it was cool to see people experience that dish. I mean, the Food Network is an entire channel basically dedicated to that. But whenever it comes to Isekai Shokudou, what I loved is that also for dishes that you've seen a million times, like spaghetti and meatballs was like one of the ones that they had. It was just a meat sauce instead of meatballs. it made me feel so nostalgic for the first time that, like, I've eaten spaghetti as a kid, or just the times that I can remember, and it being such a unique and new experience to me, and being this really cool thing. And just genuinely enjoying the food like that. That was very cool. I enjoyed that a lot.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say that, yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying, and I know I've mentioned it before, I don't even like spaghetti, and which is blasphemy, apparently, but that show made me want to play the spaghetti. I think we may have talked about this in the previous podcast, where we talked about this a little bit.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, we may have actually touched on the same topic. But it does follow through with that throughout the show.
Yeah.
Oh my god, yes.
And I would definitely say that I heavily enjoyed the show. Although, I guess, I feel like for me to fully, not grasp the show, I feel like the show could be improved upon in a couple of different ways that would actually make me enjoy it even more. Which, I'm thinking about it, like, it was a good show, like, I did enjoy it, it's just, I feel like it needed some work, in a couple of different areas. One of them being, I did enjoy the fact that there was, separate characters that we focused on each episode, and I really enjoyed that we got a different character every episode, and made it not stale, it made it feel lively. I like that. Although, I wish there was a little more interaction, kind of like we got in, I don't know, it was 7 or 8, where they interact with each other a little bit more.
Yeah, the sandwiches episode, when they actually have a debate on, like, what goes best on a sandwich.
They talk to each other like that, and then there's smaller moments, like with the main demon girl, who works as the waitress.
Yeah, Aletta.
Thank you. Aletta acts by happenstance, happens to work for one of the patrons in her world. And so it's like they have that connection outside of the restaurant, which you don't typically see too many of those throughout the show. But each time you do see it, it's like this nice little gem that you're like, ooh, yay.
Yeah. And so I don't feel like I want, like, this season to, like, be replaced with all those moments, because I think that would ruin the show.
Yeah.
But I would like to see, I think, like exactly what Zack said, I'd like to see a second season that would actually do a little bit more of that. If this show was a 2-core, I think it would be near perfect, depending on how it did things.
Right.
And I kind of think I see what you mean by that, in that, you know, this, if you think about it in that sense, this season did a lot of really solid setting things up and kind of introducing us to a pretty lively cast of characters, and I don't really... I feel like if they introduced any more at this point, it might get a bit unwieldy, because we're already working with a pretty large, diverse cast, and honestly, a lot of their storylines are kind of already, you know, set up in such a way. Yeah, and like, that was kind of some of the cool stuff, you know, that I thought about, you know, with, like, for example, there was the sickly elf princess and the, you know, prince of that desert nation who secretly had a crush on her, and, like, that was developing over the span of a couple episodes, kind of in the periphery.
Yeah.
And so, like, you know, it's little interactions like that, or with, you know, when the Black Dragon Kudo comes in for the first time, and her and Admiral Alphonse Flugel, like, bond over the spicy chicken curry or whatever, you know. It's those neat little interactions that kind of planted these really nice seeds for how these characters could bond more in the future. I think it could be a really interesting, you know, continuation to still be like, okay, you know, we're still having a cool focus on the food and such, but, you know, they were able to do that in such a way in some of the later episodes, in such that, you know, there was still a huge focus on the food, but it was also still able to develop these personal relationships. So, Matt, I totally see where you're coming from. I think actually having a bit more development in that sense would be really, really fascinating for, like, a second season.
Yes, and I think that's kind of the point that I felt with it, is that for this first season, if this is just going to be the first season, which please let there be a second one, I felt like the way that they did it, where it was almost every single episode was purely episodic. There wasn't too much, like, we saw more patrons come in, and we saw more references to other patrons and different things like that, but each episode was dedicated to this story and this story. 2 stories within each episode, and then that was it. And it was those personal stories. I felt like as an introduction to this world, I felt that worked really well. And I was fine, and I was totally fine with the fact that there was limited interaction between some of the patrons for just these first 12 episodes. I don't think that it was necessarily a detriment that the other stuff wasn't there yet, because I felt like how it presented it currently in its episodic format worked very well in its favor. At the same time, I do agree with you. I wanted more interaction, and I wanted that. And so I feel like if there is a second season, I feel like that would be the big thing that I kind of want more. I would like some introductions to like a few more characters maybe, but most of it being just the interactions between the patrons and learning a little bit more about the other world.
Right.
But at the same time, I felt like for just the first season, it didn't necessarily have to do that. And what we got was very nice, and I thought that it was very well. It was well done the way that they added it into the plot.
Yeah, and I also want to stress that if I wanted a second season, I don't think I would want like any kind of focus on the whatever. There was a little bit of part of I think episode 9 where they go into like a little bit of like fantasy backstory about there was dragons and there's like 6 of them or 7 of them or
yeah.
And I just want to stress that I wouldn't like want them to like I don't want some kind of fantasy twist where there's like where they go try to find all the dragons and like summon Dragon Ball Z or something.
Yeah. Like, no, I don't think all the patrons are gonna like up in arms and defend the restaurant from an onslaught of thieves or something like that. Like,
I don't think that'd be good for the show. Yeah,
right. But I think the show also very much understands like that isn't what it is, and I don't ever think it would really go in that sort of direction. Yeah. Like, the show has a surprising amount of lore to it. I was surprised with how much I learned about the setting, but it always... It really does. But, like, you know, in so many ways, despite having a lot of it, it was still, in a lot of ways, a backdrop for, you know, presenting the food, the character development interaction, and just kind of the joy of food in that sense.
And honestly, that's what I was going to say earlier about my 2 favorite things. Was one, the nostalgia for food. The second one was the gaps in the world building, the intentional gaps. I thought that was a very good idea that it implemented, in which you don't get the whole story about this other world. They don't go into massive amounts of exposition. You get what you need just for that character, just for that moment, and that's it. And I liked that it did that because it allows the audience to then fantasize and think about what this other world is about, and it keeps a little bit of mystery to the whole thing. Like, we still don't even know, like... We still don't even know where the fuck this door is coming from, or why this door to this restaurant just keeps appearing in places. And honestly, the way that the character is presented, especially the chef, he's just like, that's what it does. And he doesn't care about it. He's like, that's what it does. I just own a restaurant, and then it means I get more patrons, so I'm not that worried about it.
Yeah, and the show could have so easily just gotten bogged down with a bunch of ultimately meaningless exposition in that sort of sense. Oh, yeah. Like, I swear to Christ, I swear if we had a whole fucking episode about that door, I probably honestly would have zoned out.
It would have been a whole 8 minutes, and it would have just been horrible. And even further than that, if you like took all the characters, could you imagine there being like a 6-minute like narration sequence before we got to the character in the restaurant?
God.
Like, could you imagine? I mean, it was already kind of getting a little overbearing in some points, where it was like there was like 4 minutes of narration before the episode would start sometimes.
Well, it did that for certain characters, like the Lizard Man. But I felt like that kind of fit for that particular character, because that character is not going to narrate himself going through his life up until he gets to the door. And so I felt like that was okay generally, especially because it was done very little, and it was done in only small moments.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that like it was a problem every episode. I just said sometimes it became, I could feel myself tuning out as I was watching the dialogue, especially if you're like, if you're marathoning the show, or you're like, not invested in the character that you don't really know about, or you...
Yeah. Like I mean, with the episode, like, I kind of feel in that way in some respect, too. Like, as much as I still like the episode, like, working with, like, the Fairy Queen and, her thrall and such, like, I just wasn't that invested because it didn't feel as though they were doing a ton of super interesting stuff with it in the lead up to it.
No, and it was also something, their reactions to the door was something that we had seen a million times over by this point. There was not an interesting twist on it like some of the other characters.
Like, the only mildly interesting twist to it was, like, they're
tiny.
They're like, well, they're tiny, and like they're big old, like, plant golem or whatever, but that was about it.
The plant golem that they summoned that looks horrifying can totally kill a man, and he's like, yes, please, let me get the door for you.
Yeah. But, I mean, overall, yeah, like, I very much acknowledge there are, like, things it probably could have improved on, but kind of like you said, Kyle, despite the room for improvement, I don't think that those things were necessarily detriments to the show. And again, for me, like, this was kind of just a show I could go to each week to be like, again, coming from an area and a people group that is so, like, food centric. Like, for me, this was just a really interesting little twist. Like, food's always been an important part of my life, my family, friends, things of that nature. So it was just like, yeah, it was nice. Like, I hate saying every season, like, this was a comfy show for me, but I mean, like, it was. It was.
Yeah, and I specifically seek out comfy shows, but I gotta say, like, this was not just comfy, it was incredibly cathartic, especially whenever I'm going through other shows, which we'll get through later, like Made in Abyss and different things like that. This show was just incredibly cathartic. Nothing terrible ever happens, and everything that happens is just so genuinely enjoyable. And it has this charm to it that I love so much. And that's why I liked Isekai Shokudou so much for this season. Like, that was definitely my go-to show. And I remember, just because I like to marathon things, I even would specifically wait a couple of weeks just so I can build up like 3 or 4 episodes and then just plow through all of those at the same time. And then I would just feel really, really sad whenever I had to wait for another one.
Yeah, I really liked Isekai Shokudou. Even though I had like some complaints here and there, I still liked it. I thought it was good. Like, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And it made me really hungry. And
that was the biggest thing. It was a major mistake to be like watching this show at like 2 or 3 p.m. or something like that. I'd be like, oh fuck, I'm getting so hungry.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's a good show. Watch that one.
Do one of you guys want to talk about the show that you watched all the way through this season? Because I could talk about Made in Abyss, but I'm gonna rant a little bit about Made in Abyss. So do we want to get to another show?
Maybe we should just get that out of the way.
Okay.
Well, because we're gonna rant about gamers in a little bit, I'm sure. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we'll let's space these out. So let's hear about yours, Kyle.
Made in Abyss is good. It is a very good show, and if not for certain things about it, I would highly recommend every single individual that is ever interested in anime watch this show. I heard that it was a bunch of people that worked at Studio Ghibli that left, and then they decided to do this project. I don't know if that's correct.
There's the art, the background art specifically.
Right, and you can clearly tell because everything seems like it. For one thing, it's gorgeous, but it's straight. It's like straight out of Studio Ghibli, and just the massive amount of detail and beauty put into every single still frame. No, yeah, and it works so well for the show because Made in Abyss is all about exploring the abyss, just a giant hole in the ground. And the fact that each level and tier has a completely different ecosystem and a completely different, landscape to it, I think it works so well to have those people working on this show. I think it would have been a completely different show had anybody else worked on it. Because it makes this show how detailed, how amazingly beautiful every single level of this of the Abyss is. That I loved very much. I also thought it was a very interesting choice. They got an English guy, Kevin Pinkin, I think it was his name, to do the soundtrack. And it was the one thing that like kept me going through this whole show, is that soundtrack. It was perfect. In every single moment that soundtrack is playing, it's perfect. There was not a single bad song, and there was not a single moment in which it's like a song, but it's a song that you'd hear like anywhere else, and it's like, give or take. No, it almost seemed intentional for every single scene, which is good. I like that. And I don't have anything necessarily bad to say about the character designs, or most of the plot. My issues with it don't make me feel like it's a bad show, but it's not going to be a show for everyone. And basically that just comes down to Made in the Abyss is worse than, I don't want to say Gantz, but it's worse than Madoka when it comes to like how dark it gets. Yeah.
Hold up, saying what?
Let me just lay some stuff down for you. There is an assisted suicide. There is child torture. There is multiple homicides, and then there is a scene that was possibly worse than 127 hours. It was it was bad. It was really bad. And it's very similar in vein to 127 hours. If it was a show with a bunch of adults, I think I could stomach it a little bit better. But the major issue that I had is that this show, all of the main characters are children. And it's just disgusting to see the shit that these kids are going through. It's just too dark. It's way too dark for what's going on. And then at first I was like, okay, it's dark, but it's like Madoka dark. I can get through it. And then it just got darker and darker as it went. And at that point, especially because they show a lot of it through animation, it's not happening off screen. And because of that, it got to a point where I was like, okay, this is just too much. It's absolutely too much. And I went into the show knowing that it was going to get very dark. But it just became too much as it went forward. Is there a reason for it plot-wise? Yes, and it explains everything perfectly. Everything that you see happens for a reason. None of it is gratuitous for the sake of being gratuitous. But just the way it plays out is just too much. I almost feel like they should have like toned it down a bit. It gets real bad. Like there, specifically, not to get into like too many spoilers for you guys if you haven't seen it, which I still recommend to watch it. There's a scene in which one character watches her best friend get distorted and shaped into a bloody mess on the floor, and she's screaming, and the bloody mess on the floor is screaming, and then just says, "Please kill me, just please kill me," like over and over again. It's just fucked up. It's just really fucked up, and these are children that we're talking about. So
that sounds fucked up no matter what that is.
Right. But like I said, it'd be fucked up either way. But I feel like I could stomach it a little bit better if they were at least adults. But because they're children, it feels like it steps over a boundary in that way. Okay. That being said, I do highly recommend the show. Just if you go into it knowing this will probably be one of the darker things you've ever seen. It's very good. It's very, very good. And it ended on a cliffhanger. It seems intentional. It ended... surprisingly, it ended on a cliffhanger. I thought that they would actually get to the end of the story, but they didn't. They're like not even close. They're like halfway. But I was actually okay with it because it made sure that the pacing was consistent for the entire show, and the pacing was great. Everything that happened was paced very well. Any montage sequence or sequence on which they like stay in a certain level of the abyss for an extended period of time made sense. So I felt like they did a really good job of just cutting it there, or making the call to cut it like halfway through a story and just being like, okay, we're going to leave it here, and then if we get renewed for a second season, we'll do a second season. So yeah, it was really good. It really was, and I don't want to like not sing its praises. It's just it was probably one of the darker things I've seen come out of an anime. So, is really good though.
Okay, all right. So
nice.
That's interesting. I knew it was going to get dark.
You would warn me. You would warn me.
I told you. I looked. I already know all the spoilers. I already read them all. Okay. So I looked at it and I was like, that is some dark shit.
Yeah, I feel bad too, because like at work I was recommending the show to everybody. I was like, yeah, you should totally watch it.
Oh god.
And then I got to episode, I think it was like 9, and I was like, fuck no, I should have recall that statement. Redacted. Redacted.
That's the important thing. You can't recommend shows until they're done.
Fucking anime.
I've made this mistake. So I find it interesting that it's the darker stuff is what everyone talks about, and that's probably why a lot of people are into the show, because that's just the way things work anymore.
Yeah, people want something that's going to like push the limits, I guess, in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Get that dark and edgy.
I will say, outside of the darker stuff, even as things kept going, it had its darker moments, but then it had a lot of incredibly uplifting moments, which is very different than Madoka. Madoka was like... Muguka is suffering. It was just constant oppressive darkness. This show is not that. It is way darker when it decides to hit darker, but it also has incredibly uplifting and positive moments to it, which I appreciated immensely, so that I'm not just sitting here crying in my seat.
Okay, well, this kind of brings up something interesting. So what are your thoughts on Madoka then? And you've been kind of comparing Made in Abyss to Madoka for a little bit.
I went to that because Madoka in my mind sticks out in one particular similarity. It's children going through incredibly oppressive, torturous, and dark scenarios. And that's why I bring up the similarity. I like Madoka. I hate the movie, the third movie, but well, that's not true. I hate the last 20 minutes of the third movie. But I like Madoka in general. I thought it was a good series, even if it did seem a little bit torturous in just how oppressive that dark atmosphere is. I thought it was well written. I thought it was good. I enjoyed it.
So, but like, what kind of sets it apart in that sense? Like, if they're both kind of torture porn in that sort of sense, like
in Madoka, the only deaths that you see are deaths. You get, I think there was a scene where Sayaka beats the shit out of a witch, and like she starts getting bloody, but it's black blood. But besides that, the only like grotesqueness to it was like whenever one of their shards gets like shot, or like one of their shards breaks and they die. And that's more, it's not they are dying on screen, but it's not grotesque, I guess. It's very much they die and then, oh, they're dead. Instead of break the girl's arm, she dies from poison, and then because they tried to ascend in the abyss and the curse of the abyss affects them, she starts bleeding from her eyes and screaming for her best friend to kill her. Like,
okay.
So it sounds like here the difference that I'm hearing is that Made in Abyss was so immersed in its realism that it took everything to that realistic limit. While Madoka was more cartoony, in the fact that its world was just more cartoony, because that's just the nature of the witches and the Shaft style of the show.
Right.
So that's what I'm hearing here, is that it's just a stylistic difference in the art style that led to these differences.
And to the benefit of Made in Abyss, once again, everything is explained. Everything that is happening has a basis and has a reason for it, and they prep you well ahead of time that this may happen. Like, episodes before, and then they'll remind you again in like very, very clever ways, hey, something might happen. But when it actually does end up happening, it's just, watching it is just a bit too much sometimes. At the same time, I don't think it was poorly done. It was just too dark for my tastes. But in its defense, I think it works very well for what the show is about, because it's about survival. It's about survival in very incredibly inhospitable conditions, and you even see like they come to the conclusion in which they have to do the 127 hours thing. They come to the conclusion together, and they even go through it relatively realistically. They tourniquet the arm, they let the blood flow stop, and then at that point they start to try and cut off the arm. Like, it's relatively realistic for a survival scenario. So, like, I understand what they're doing. They even had one scene in which one of the characters was passed out, so they couldn't eat the medicine that they needed to eat. So one of the characters says, "Well, if we can't get it to digest orally through the membranes in the mouth, we'll go through the anus." And then they don't show it, thank goodness. But they actually take the medicine and they insert it anally, which, I mean, that is a thing that is true in medicine, suppositories. It was a bit unnecessary to have a sound effect. But
what?
All right, we'll pass.
But no, everything that happens is at least realistic in that sense. And I don't think that those were necessarily negatives, I would say. And I don't think it starts getting like too much as far as like some of those other scenes. But it's the particular scenes that I have issue with, because it just seems to like I guess they just weren't censored is the thing, because of their specific choice of platform or something. And so they're just like, all right, well, we're going to get away with animating this when no other show would be able to.
That's kind of interesting that it wasn't censored. Most shows don't censor that. That's kind of interesting. I don't know much about censorship, but I think it's interesting that that didn't play a part.
I will say one thing that I thought was really hilarious as I was going through, which also tonally fit, and please forgive me for the memes because that's not what I intend at all. The show, I think the creators played a little too much Dark Souls. Because it's like they had, okay, so let me throw some comparisons your way. There's certain characters that talk about that they lost their humanity and so they became hollows. And most of the badasses in the show that the main characters come across, and even a couple that they face, have names and titles. Like the main character's mother is called Liza the Annihilator. And then one of the characters that they face, which in a very boss battle style with like Bloodborne music playing in the background, is Ozen the Immovable. I have expected the title to come up and then just a really long red health bar. But and then there's also a lot of those elements of like survival. You only survival and desperately trying to hang on, and like the struggle that comes from this incredibly difficult world, and every single creature that they come across is a threat to them. Every single one of them. Even the smaller and cuter ones are a threat. So I think they might have played a little too much Dark Souls, but I don't know. It worked well for this universe, especially because it is very survival based. It was interesting to see how the characters got around that and relied upon each other, because the Rico, the girl, is incredibly well educated about all of the creatures, all of the places that they're going, and all of the survival stuff that she needs to know. And then Reg, the robot, is the more physical guy that's able to carry the backpack, is able to get them from point A to point B with his stretchy arms and stuff like that. So it was interesting to see how they've relied upon each other. And then at times, whenever one of them is passed out or one of them is poisoned, how the other person has to then rely upon themselves and get them both out. It makes for a lot of really good drama.
What you're telling me is Made in Abyss is the Dark Souls of anime.
So we can stop now, right?
Anyways, it's a great show. It really is a great show. But
just ignore it, okay.
But it is very, very dark. And that's just the only thing that I would say for somebody that wants to watch this show is be forewarned going in. It's a great show, and I highly recommend it to anybody that wants to watch it, but just be forewarned that it is very dark. I would probably give this show maybe an 8 or a 9, honestly, out of 10. And I would love to give it a perfect score for several reasons. It's just, damn, that it just gets too much.
Fair enough.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Also, I know that I think some people had issues with the show because of gender and different things like that.
I don't know anything about that, but...
I don't either.
I was going to read
but
into
I
that.
haven't looked too much into
it.
I
do think it was interesting on that subject that they did do some things that I haven't really seen in an anime before. They had a what appeared to be a transgender woman in the show. And I don't think she was a transvestite, specifically because there's a scene in which Reg, the robot, is talking to her. And then they apparently have some discussion off screen, and we come back to them. And he makes a joke saying, "Oh, we both have problems with our bodies, don't we? We're a lot alike in that way." Him being a robot that wants to be human, and her having a dysphoria. I thought that was very interesting. I had never really seen that in a show before, and the fact that they treated it relatively respectfully, and there was never a situation in which they're like, but you're really a boy or something like that, or somebody looks underneath her skirt or something like that. It was just an open discussion. They had a discussion, then they moved on, and the character was just the character. And they didn't become this character is here because transgender. It was just this character is a character. It's a very good character, and also they're transgender.
Nice. All right.
Yeah. And they also had that for one of the other characters, I think was very feminine, but they were actually a boy or something like that. But I don't know too much. Because it was the only way that you could tell is if you listened to the actual Japanese and realized that they were using specific gendered terms. But I don't know Japanese, so I couldn't figure out who the feminine person that was the boy was.
Yeah, I don't know anything about any of that stuff. The only problems I heard were that some people had problems with the first couple episodes because of the way they were rolling out the world.
Okay.
There was just a little too much narration, or narration was an issue, and just too much information at once. They wanted to explore the world, not get it all dumped onto them.
That's fair. At the same time, I feel like you kind of need to get some up front. Because as they go forward, they explain what they need to explain and then move on, but they expect you to have a basis in order to do that.
Sure.
So could they have done it better? Probably. But I think the way that it was done, I don't think was too bad, especially because it doesn't really ever get too expository. So, yeah, it's a good show. Just big forewarning.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think almost everybody knew that it was going to get dark after the first couple episodes. If they didn't, I bet they got surprised.
Well, and even then, the community was talking about what was going to happen later, well before the episodes even came out, because apparently a lot of people had read the original source material.
Or they didn't know about it and then went and read it after the first episode. A lot of people do that.
And then they were. I appreciated that whenever I saw the community wasn't necessarily giving out spoilers, they were just like, "Hey guys, real quick, you might just want to be
before
prepared.
You start watching this,
right?
This is happening. This is a thing in the show."
Well, yeah. I somehow avoided all references like that, so I guess at least now I know before I get into it.
Yeah, I wasn't fully interested in the show, but as soon as I heard there were some big-ass spoilers, I was like, I gotta go look at these. What is everyone, why is everyone throwing warnings around? This is, people don't normally do that. With shows like Attack on Titan, people are like, ooh, it's gonna get dark, and then
right, but from the first episode, they let you know it's gonna get dark. This show, not at all. Even the ED is bullshit. Because, like, it's a nice little cutesy thing with, like, really happy music. And it basically shows the entire experience of 2 and then the 3 characters as they're, like, going through the pit. But it's bullshit for 2 reasons. One, ain't no way it's that happy, and it's fucking bullshit that that they tried to make it seem that way. But then the other thing is that the ED goes through a lot more material than the show does.
So here's the good question: did they play the ED after like some of the darker scenes?
Yep.
Did they do the jarring thing?
They did some straight Madoka shit.
It wasn't too jarring, and they were very clever about a lot of things. For instance, one of the things that this show did, which I wasn't entirely sold on, is each episode, I don't know if anybody else has talked about this, but each episode starts with a little bit of the previous episode. The same animation, the same dialogue, and everything, it just goes through it again.
Interesting.
Sometimes they mix it up because sometimes it will be from a different person's perspective, so then we start getting some of their inner monologue. But that didn't happen too many times. And then there were also moments that were slightly different in other ways. Like, for instance, the 127 Hours episode happens. There's no music that's going on. It's very serious. When they come back, the next episode, there's music happening, and it's a little bit more lighthearted, but that's because you know that the character in question is going to be fine. It's going to be okay. And then on top of that, it's also from another character's perspective who is relatively neutral about the situation that's happening, and so like we're just basically getting music for them. Even though we're going through the same scene.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's kind of interesting.
It was cool, and I appreciated that they did that. They ended the episode with like no music going during the show, and then we get to the ED, which is the ED. But then in the very next episode, whenever they pick back up, all of a sudden, music. And it's not like super happy music, it's just music that fits the character that just appeared.
Yeah, that is interesting. I mean, I don't really have much to add to that. I haven't seen the show, so...
Same.
I do definitely recommend that you guys watch it at some point. It's good.
I'll get around to it when the hype dies down.
Yep, when I'm not trying to plow through a bunch of seasonal stuff and have some downtime, I'll probably dig into it.
But yeah, that's Made in Abyss. I feel like there's like 50 million more things that I could talk about, but I don't know. I feel like I said my piece.
Yeah. I mean, that was a good bit, so...
It was. Let's balance that out a bit, maybe.
Yeah,
that was a lot.
Do we just want to do Tsurezure Children?
Talk about jarring. No, but like, if you want to, sure. I am incredibly upset that there's not more Tsurezure Children.
I am glad that Tsurezure Children was not a full series.
How dare you?
Could you imagine if that was 23 episodes, or not 23 episodes, 23 minutes?
No, I agree with you that they needed to be as short as they were, but I would like more episodes in general.
Like, I can understand that, but again, as like being a very cutesy romance 4-coma adaptation, yeah, this was the proper format for it.
Absolutely, yeah. I thought that choice in format was just the complete correct way to go.
Yeah, I mean, they did it well. The only reason I said that was because, like, I could feel myself drifting away in the last episode.
Really?
Yeah.
That's kind of interesting.
I don't know what it is. It's the 4-coma thing. I think it's just I just get sick of seeing the same thing over and over again. It's just it grades on me, no matter how short it is, no matter how long it is.
That's fair. I don't know if I would call it the same thing over and over again, though.
I mean, it's pretty much the same thing over and over again, just with different characters.
That's a little mean, don't you think?
I don't think so. It's a romance series. It's not the same situations, but it's the same type of thing.
Well, I guess in that it's romance and it's about romance, but it's about a bunch of different characters falling in love with a bunch of other different characters, and then throughout the show we get different experiences of how romance plays out. Like, I thought it was nice that we didn't just get people that confessed, we then got to see some people continue on with their relationship and like try to work through, okay, we both love each other and we're dating now, how do we do that? And then there's some people that are a little bit further on in their relationship and they're like, well, what do we do now? And then we had some people that were struggling in their relationships. I thought it was really nice that you start to get a whole bunch of different variances in romance in the show with different characters.
I feel like they did a good job in kind of getting a good bit of variety in that, just so it wouldn't get extremely stale. And I did enjoy it. I don't feel like this show did anything incredible. Like, I enjoyed watching it. I didn't have any I didn't have any major issues with it. Like, I wanted to smack some characters around when some stupid misunderstandings happened because, because they were obligatory in the show. Like, there was a time in this show where I was like, oh, are we actually going to get some stuff where the characters talk about their stuff? And then it was just, nah, don't think we're going to do that. I'm like, okay.
I think
that is how it is.
I think some of the handling of those misunderstandings, though, was really fucking funny to me compared to other shows where I'm just infuriated.
Well, like, some of them were. Like, for example, the relationship between, let me think here. I think it was Goda and, between Takeru and Ayaka. The Nozaki-kun looking dude and, blue hair girl. Like, I thought that the way they handled a bunch of their stuff was really cute, and I feel as though, like, they were one of the least infuriating couples in the whole series. I really enjoyed it, and it's possibly just because I enjoy that kind of goofy-ass humor. Like, it really reminded me of Gekkan Shoujo Nozaki-kun in a lot of ways, just because of the way, like, some of the characters sort of played out. But, I don't know, like, it was an enjoyable show. It didn't do anything groundbreaking for me. It's like,
I don't think it necessarily like was treading new ground in what it was doing. I mean, especially because the character archetypes that we start out with, as well as the situations that we find our characters in, have been done a million times over in anime. That's not necessarily the part that is the charm of this show.
Right. I'm not saying like this is. I'm not saying like this is a show that has to innovate the genre. Like, it's not going to. And if you went into the show expecting that it was going to, there's something seriously wrong with how you perceive this thing.
I think the charm of this show comes from its writing, because the way that the characters talk to each other and specifically the way that the things play out as far as like timing wise is definitely the show's strong suit. Is its writing. It's the tropes that you know, but they're just done very, very well and very cleverly, and in all of it in a very humorous way. And I think that's what makes it charming to me, was that whoever was just writing the dialogue and stuff like that was just doing a very clever job of it. Mm-hmm. Outside of that, no, it's not groundbreaking. It's not the most amazing show of the season or of the year or some shit like that. I just genuinely enjoyed it because I like romance shows, but I specifically enjoy romance shows that are not like more drama than comedy or something like that. Sometimes it's nice to just have something that's very comfortable.
Mm-hmm. It was very easy to digest in that sense.
Yeah, and I enjoyed the shit out of it in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I don't know. I guess I'm more of a romance drama person, but
yes, you are.
And granted, there are times when I want that, and there are times when I think that is very awesome to have. It's just now was not the season that I wanted that to happen. A lot of other shit was happening in my life. I didn't need more drama.
and that's fair, but I don't know. I just don't feel like Zach said, I don't feel like it was a groundbreaking show. I enjoyed watching it, but I don't think I want any more. It's not my thing. It's just not. It's just I don't feel like it's something I need to invest more time into than I already have.
Oh yeah, totally fair. And if I'm being entirely honest, I would not have watched this show if it wasn't short. I'm just gonna be honest with you.
Right, and I think that's the big
either,
thing.
so.
That's the big thing that works for this show is that because it's a short format, 7 minutes per episode, you can knock it out pretty quickly. But then on top of that, it doesn't overstay its welcome and what it's trying to do.
Isn't it 11 minutes an episode?
Yes, it is.
Is it? Okay. Well, even still, it's very short. It's like half the normal time.
Yep.
And that's split between a bunch of different characters. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I personally, because this shit's my jam, I personally am excited for more, which is why I'm reading the manga now. And there's a lot of the manga, so I'm very happy about that. But I agree with you. Like, I'm happy with what I got, and I'm happy that I didn't try to do like too much more in like the same season. I just wouldn't mind another season. I don't know what they would do to do that though, because between the manga and the anime, they cut out half the cast. Which is saying something, because we're already dealing with like 16 different characters.
Yep. Well, chase your bliss, dude. Follow your dreams. Get that 4-coma goodness.
Good.
Are 4-comas creamy on the inside, or are they chewy?
Oh my god.
What?
I'm just wondering, like, what kind of... You said sweet goodness, like it's like a candy or something, and... If it's sweet, then what's the filling of a 4-coma?
Matt, get your Lucky Star shit out of here.
Okay. I'm done.
It's a red bean paste. Okay, so what do you want to talk about next?
Oh my god.
Did you want to get into gamers? Go ahead and talk about that, because you guys are gonna... I feel like you guys are just holding back on me, and I want to hear it. I want to hear it.
Well... Normally, I would start by saying Gamers is a masterpiece. That's how I normally start these sort of discussions.
Fuck off.
And Gamers is a masterpiece of our generation.
Hey, Matt?
Yeah, what's up?
We don't need a title for this podcast. That's fine. You can just tell me how you really feel about it.
So Gamers is a masterpiece of this generation.
Okay,
yeah,
well, why?
What a fucking show.
Yeah, Gamers... Gamers is nothing like I thought it was gonna be.
No.
And I'm kind of glad it wasn't, in some regards.
I fully agree with you, actually. Hearing the premise of this show from the get-go, of this, this dorky, nerdy dweeb that has a passion for video games, finds a video game club at his, school, and it's like, oh, okay, I know where this is going to go, but hold up, you do not know where this is going to go. From the start, this show works to sort of subvert your expectations in a way.
Yeah, and I like that whenever I saw it in the first episode, whenever, you get this whole premise and setup for what the show was going to be, and then at the very end of the episode, he goes, no thanks, I don't want to be in your club.
Yeah, well, what I was going to say was...
I was just going to... We might be about to say the same thing, but in the first episode, there was a lot of hints dropped to what was coming, and I think we just all ignored them. The fact that it was the thing that everyone got really mad about in the first episode. It was the fact that there was a whole bunch of arrows with dialogue bubbles saying I don't remember. It was a bunch of romance leads, she's gonna cheat on him, or that she doesn't know where this is gonna go, or he's gonna not be like this in the future, or something like that.
One of the specific ones I remember is he's going to ruin her popularity at school, or was one of the ones that happened, and and then it came up with another one, and it was and it's all her fault or something like that, which I thought those were kind of funny.
Yeah, unpopular opinion, I really enjoyed those a lot. It really made my day with that first episode.
I don't know why it's such an unpopular opinion though, because I liked them too.
What I was essentially going to say though is, this first episode of Gamers, it works to subvert your perception of how things are going to go with this show, and then the rest of the series absolutely confirms your perceptions of how the show is going to go. like would you say that's about right, Matt? Or like
I guess it didn't go where I thought it was gonna go. I actually expected the show to be like generic club shenanigans, with an unbearable MC, which, by the way, I told you so. Haha.
That was directed towards me, wasn't it?
Yeah, a little bit.
How could you watch like the first few episodes of the show and not think?
In my defense,
man,
I only watched the first episode. Well, no, I watched 2 episodes.
Okay, but that's fine. But by the end of the first episode, you should want to dunk him in a trash can.
No, I didn't think he was an amazing character. I just didn't think that he was the worst pile of shit on the planet. And then I went on Discord and I was like, "What's up, Matt?" And Matt's like, "He's the worst pile of shit on the planet."
Yeah, no, he is.
And
he
confirmed.
he is a maximum degree dum-dum.
Oh no, yeah, I was never like refuting that. That was never something that I stated. Even though I've only seen 2 episodes.
I mean, I thought he was a dum-dum, but I didn't expect this level of dum-dum-dumness.
Yeah, I guess I can't really say like everything beyond the first episode, works to confirm my suspicions, because you're very much right. Like, after the first episode, I was like, okay, well, this is going to get into some weird, like, kind of video game-centric love shenanigans, probably, but then it just devolved into this, like, episode-by-episode breakdown of how in the hell can they possibly misunderstand each other more than they already have. And I don't know how it is possible for them to keep just absolutely fucking up
It's amazing.
so consistently.
It's amazing the amount of misunderstandings that happen without anybody saying anything. And I mean, I understand that's kind of what perpetuates the misunderstanding, but you don't understand how many times in this show where a character would think of something and then draws the wrong conclusion, which would lead to another misunderstanding, which would lead them to draw to another wrong conclusion.
And what is even worse is when a character thinks some stuff through and in their mind comes to the actual correct conclusion, and there's like, no, that's not possible at all. I wanted... it put me into a fury. I wanted to smash things multiple times watching this show. These characters infuriated me, Kyle. You have no idea. I came back each week.
And now you know why I didn't watch the show.
And the show, like, the show knows it too. There are parts where, like, Matt, like, you posted on the Discord or in our Slack or something, gamers in 3 pictures.
Yep, that was a tweet I tweeted out.
That's what it was, yeah. And, arguably the least infuriating character in the whole show, Uehara. I can't remember specifically what it is, but
I could probably find the tweet if that's what you're referring to.
But like he essentially, like, things of course spiral completely out of control, and he gets to a point where he's trying to get everyone together to actually air out all their misunderstandings, because he's like, okay, there's some weird shit going on here, we need to reconcile. And he's like, I just wanted everyone to get together and we would actually talk about things and we'd all understand everything. And then he says, but of course that could never happen. Or something of that nature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll talk about what's going on and finally put a clean end to this ridiculous love pentagon. But that was never going to happen. Beautiful.
Yeah, it's just...
That's basically gamers.
You know what I find interesting?
Oh, by the way, doesn't it evolve beyond a love pentagon? Doesn't it become like a love hexagram?
Hexagon?
Hexagram. It's It's a hexagram.
It started as a pentagram. It's still pretty evil, so we're going to call it a hexagram.
Oh, he did say pentagram. That's right. Well, I mean, I mean, technically, if you really want to get into the minutia of it, but not really, like, I mean, there's not really, to be honest, there's not really a whole lot more to say about gamers beyond that. Like,
you know what I found interesting?
It's an infuriating masterpiece.
It really is.
As somebody who didn't actually watch the whole show, I found it interesting that a show that's called Gamers and even has PUBG in its OP didn't really have much to do with games.
It had a lot of Arc System Works games in it.
Yeah, that's true. You were talking about that. But
that's about it.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, yeah, it really didn't, but, like, it did and it didn't. Like, it had a lot of interesting, like, back talk of sort of different niche, like, gaming circles and, like, different stuff of, like, especially, like, Mobage kind of gaming culture, things of, you know, that variety and all that jazz. And, like, you know, there was some interesting discussion, but nothing that was, you know, particularly interesting in that sense. Like, it's...
It wasn't focused on either.
Right. It was just kind of like, you know, it's there and it is serving the purpose to get characters to a point where they're going to, like, either scream at each other or misunderstand something and then scream at each other, or misunderstand something and then think on it for an episode or two, after which they'll come to a completely different conclusion, which is also wrong.
Do you think maybe they were just in love with games like Catherine? It kind of became like their whole mentality.
I mean, that's a disservice to Catherine.
I've been trying to like formulate a theory about what was this show trying to do. What's the relation between this love pentagram thing and the games? Like, what is the connection here? Is it trying to say something about nerd culture? Is it trying to say something about nerd romances? Is this like a
don't know if it was trying to say anything about games. I think it was mostly just wanting to tell a story.
I was just going to say, I think you're reading too much into it, and I think just that the video games were a convenient vehicle for this to go through, honestly.
A nerdy backdrop to hook people into watching the show and then get them obsessed with how much they hate the characters.
Yeah, because, I mean, like, you know, it's sort of like if you had this show, but it was just about, like, 5 quote-unquote normal high schoolers, you know, with this degree of misunderstandings and shit, like, even if it was the same and if it was arguably still as good as it is, it probably wouldn't have the same hook for some people because, you know, it wouldn't have that, you know, us gamers, right guys, kind of non-humor to it. Like, there's things that are attempted humor and, like, you know, in-jokes of gamer culture that are just, like, it's not even that funny. It's just, like, you're making an observation.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I guess, like,
it's just stating facts. It's not really a joke.
Yeah.
People who play first-person shooters like to play first-person shooters.
People die when they're killed. Like, I mean...
Yeah, we're on that level now.
Like, ultimately, I feel as though, really, what the show was about was just trying to make the most infuriating, confusing, like, masochistic series of misunderstandings possible. Like, I've never seen the level that this show has gone to in some degrees with how fucking batshit insane these characters go in their assumptions and how far they spiral out of control. But then somehow by the end everything is okay.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, I kind of get what you're saying. Personally, for me, I guess I kind of went through like the 5 stages of grieving when I was watching this show, which is kind of funny because it was kind of just unbelievable of what was happening, and then I got really mad, and now I feel like I've been enlightened by gamers. I feel like this show is actually good in some regard. just because of the fact of the sheer amount of things that I've never seen before just happened.
It really is.
It's kind of like a spectacular bubble in of its own.
Like, like, y'all know at this point how much I cannot stand shows that, like, rely so heavily on this misunderstandings kind of bullshit. But somehow they have made it, like, palpable and, like, actually, like, not palpable, palatable in this sense. I don't know how they did it. I don't know, like, I think it's honestly just a sheer absurdity of the degree of this shit that they did. And like, there's no really other way to explain it, because, like, it's not good writing in that sense. Like, it's not good story progression. But God Almighty, like, that weekly degree of fury that, like, made me want to pop their heads off and be like, what are you doing?
Well,
like, it kept me coming back each week in that sense.
And we talked about this a little bit, Zach, the other day. We were talking about how Gamers kind of has its charm in its misunderstandings and its absurdity. Where we talk about it being kind of a sort of, I think you referred to it as a comedy of errors.
Mm-hmm.
A literal comedy of errors. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It kind of has that same sort of appeal to it. It's funny because there's no possible way that this could ever happen.
Oh, right, yeah. And it's like, you know, if you really think to the things that commonly use misunderstandings, like, say, fucking Nisekoi or some other, like, you know, whatever dime a dozen romance-y kind of thing. Like, you know, the show kind of puts itself as a romantic comedy in that sense, but the romance is kind of really a facade in that sense. It's like a red herring, because it doesn't really play that much into it. Like, it is a, like, 8-point font ROM and, like, a 32-point font COM in that sense. Wow, okay. That was a really bad
analogy.
It was a very confusing way of saying that. Yeah.
Awful shit. Very little romance. Very much higher sense of comedy, and man, I don't know. Like, you know, it's not as though they were doing. They weren't using the misunderstandings as a way to build drama. It was just a way to continue to escalate the comedy of the thing, I feel like the way that you guys are describing it to me, and I may be making a bad comparison, but I feel like, well, for one, that this show is very aware of what it's doing, and it seems like it's intentionally doing it just to get an emotional response from its audience. That it was intentionally doing this just to infuriate people. That's kind of what I have ultimately ended up reconciling with this show. I feel as though from the start it has worked to infuriate its viewers because it knows what it's doing, and especially if, like, the final episode of this show is an indication. Like,
the final episode.
What a fucking weird episode.
That was the weirdest episode.
You said it was very Twilight Zone-y because the last episode is what could have been, basically.
The final episode is all about games.
Yeah.
Except, like,
it's like they made one last episode to say, hey, this is what the show could have been, and then we decided not to do that.
Yeah, but the twist is that I'm glad it wasn't that show.
Oh my god, yes.
I would have hated that show. I would not have finished that show if it was like that.
I almost feel like that was an intentional choice, is that, like, they intentionally made it and framed it in such a way that it's like, hey, well, at least it's not this. Not that they could have done, like, any middle ground or something like that. They're just like, at least it's not this.
Yeah. I mean, the episode was pretty much quite literally a 20-minute prolonged discussion of DLC in video games, and the concept of it, the different kinds of DLC, you know, like, would you pay for one kind of DLC but not the other, you know, why would you do it? And it's just like, I kept watching it and I'm like, I mean, this isn't really funny, and it's not super engaging, and there were just like they were doing like this, you know, gamers club retreat or whatever at like a hot spring, and there was literally like a 2 to 3 minute section where it was just so fucking dialogue heavy, talking about like, you know, why would you, you know, pay such and such for a game that you've already paid like 6,000 yen for or whatever, and all the while it was like, you know, painting over like the whole female cast like in a hot spring or something, like with really uncomfortable close-ups, and I'm like, why are you doing this? Like, what do we stand to gain from this? What's the fucking matter with you?
Like, it's almost like I feel like the creators of this show, I would almost like to say they're incompetent, but I think they know exactly what they're doing.
Right.
I feel like they're playing us. Like, this is...
The way that you're describing it makes me feel like what Watamate was to uncomfortable self-hate, this is the same thing with just anger for its audience.
Well, but like the really interesting thing is, like, you know, for the entire rest of the show, there weren't any like weird there wasn't a lot of really weird, uncomfortable like sexualized humans. I don't recall those, but yeah. So it's like, you know, again, like Matt, what you said, like here's what this could have been. Haha. Well, have some nice like light edgy with some video game commentary.
I guess that's why it did get the ecchi tag. Then is probably for what it was going to do in the last episode.
I mean, it wasn't much. It was kind of crazy, but I've heard some arguments like the last episode, since they were talking about like bikini DLC, like people buying that.
You can explain it away, but the fact of the matter is you don't even need to do it in the first place.
I mean, so, I know that.
What I'm saying is that I agree with you guys that it feels like most likely if what they're doing within the show is like explain it away, bikinis, haha, then maybe, and that's the only episode that they did it in, that most likely, everything about this was an intentional decision to just be like, look what could have been, and so glad that it's not.
But anyway,
and I just don't think that's like we keep framing it as in a way of like
self-aware.
Not like that. It's just the fact that this is some way to infuriate us. I think this was a creator's attempt at trying to do a comedic scenario by infuriating us. Mm-hmm. I don't think their intention was to directly. It's not something malicious on their part. They were trying to make something funny, which it is funny. It just also had a side effect of infuriating everybody.
It's a very specific brand of humor. Like the humor comes from the sheer fact that it is just consistently, why are you doing this? Well, I know why you're doing this, but why are you doing this?
Yeah, and I think that's why I did want to compare it to Watamate, in that like Watamate was a very specific type of humor, in that it was making
some
fun
cringe
of you.
Humor.
It was intentionally cringy because everything that the main character is doing, the creator knew for a fact its audience had done at some point, and it was kind of poking fun at it. Not in a malicious way, just in a way where you're like, oh gosh, that's awkward.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like that. It's similar, I would say.
Just in this case, instead of it being talking about the audience directly about what you've done, it's just trying to get an emotional response out of you.
Yeah, which it was trying to be comedic, but it just made people mad because I don't know if they just didn't get it, or it was directly infuriating. It
was directly infuriating because it's like it's absurd. It's an absurdity to it that is its own brand of humor. Is just this absurdness of like, why? Please stop.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Still don't know if I'm gonna watch it. I might.
I would. I don't know who I would recommend this show to.
I don't know either. This is kind of weird. Like, I'm glad I watched it, but I don't know if I would. I don't know how I could pan a recommendation of this show to someone.
To be honest, there is no situation that had I not watched it this season, I can't see a point in the future where I would sit down and willingly watch this show.
Yeah, it's kind of like...
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, it's kind of like one of those shows that you see recommended on Mal, like for another show, and you start watching it, and just by accident, and then you just kind of just have to find it on your own, and then watch it, and then realize your mistake.
Yeah, I just, like... Yeah, I seriously don't think I would have watched this if it wasn't for the fact that, like, it was this season. There was some discussion going on about it at the time, and I was like, I'm hate watching this right now, but still enjoying it at the same time.
I know, isn't that weird?
Like, I just... Like, I normally don't do that. Like, I genuinely normally do not watch shows in that frame of mind. But, I don't know, Gamers just did it for me for some reason. It was very much, like you said, it's an anomaly. And, yeah, like, I mean... I don't know what to say. Like,
I don't know either. Like, it's just so... It's so bizarre. Like,
yeah.
I don't even know if I would say watch Gamers. Like, the sort of gameplay that's going on in my head right now is that I want people to watch the show, but I don't want to, like, sadistically recommend it just because I want to see everyone's reaction.
Oh my god, yeah. Like, it's... like, if... I would only recommend Gamers if you had a very specific... sense of humor, I think, or certain sensibilities in how you approach your enjoyment of different media. Like, if you can get into this kind of infuriating, cringe, almost like hate-watching sort of thing, sure. But this is so far removed from any show I would normally recommend to anyone.
Yeah, it's just so bizarre. I don't know. I'm glad I watched it. I enjoyed myself by the end. I kind of begrudgingly say that, but...
Yeah, like, I did ultimately enjoy the ride. I won't be watching it again.
Yeah, that's kind of in the same boat there.
Yeah. I think we just need to leave this.
Yeah, alright. Setting the Gamers down.
I think we're good with Gamers.
Said all that you want to say. Well,
yeah.
Let's do a little bit more positive one. You want to talk about Princess Principal?
Let's do that.
Sure. All right.
Because I know that we've talked it to death with all of the episodic posts that we've put out, but I mean, as a final look back on it, I genuinely enjoyed this far more than what I thought I would, and it was probably my favorite pick of the season as far as shows go.
Like, yeah. I definitely would say that Princess Principal was a surprise in a lot of good ways.
Yeah.
I didn't think I'd actually like that show as much as I did. I didn't even think that show was going to be what it was. And I'm still kind of sad that there's not more people talking about it. Like, I still see some people talking about it, which is good, but I feel like it kind of got buried, and I think that's probably because it's an Amazon show. Rip Amazon.
Yeah, it sucks because, like, this was a show that everyone should have watched, really. It was such a... It's absolutely a fantastic show, and as far as what was airing this season, this was one that should have been talked about more.
Yeah, like, this should have been the show that everyone blew up about. But
yeah.
But kind of, to be honest, it's kind of like I look down my Twitter feed and I would see a couple people posting about it, and then, like, I would be like, oh, that's good, people like the show, and then, like, I would not see anything about it for a while. And then I'd be like, oh.
Yeah, it was mostly just, like, besides ourselves, where we were actively trying to write posts about the show, besides ourselves, I think there may have been, like, one or two more people that were, like, actively keeping up with this show. Which, to be fair, there is a very high monetary price point to buy into Anime Strike and actually be able to watch this. Though, there was another platform for people outside the United States to watch the show, which may have been a little bit more productive for them.
Yeah.
Because I don't think... I think I don't remember who it is, but somebody else had this besides Amazon outside of the US, and you can actually... I think it was like comparable to Crunchyroll in price.
It must be Anime Lab. They must be the only ones.
Okay.
Because that's the only service I know outside of America that would be like that.
And it's such a shame. And I don't think that it necessarily was a bad thing that Amazon picked up this show, in the sense of, like, Amazon so far these past 2 or 3 seasons has consistently had some really great shows.
Oh yeah, like, I mean, they're definitely funding or allowing for a lot of really interesting, very high quality shows to get put out. But
yes, yeah.
But at the same time, you know, that a sort of transition is really putting a lot of people off, I feel like, as far as accessibility to these things.
They need to change their business strategy. That's the only way that people are going to be watching these shows, and it's the only way that what they're doing will actually turn a profit and be productive, and people will actually like them in this community. Is like, people fucking hate Netflix, but always second place on their list right now is Amazon, which is a shame, because Amazon has The Great Passage, Scum's Wish, Princess Principal, and a bunch more that are actually really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
So it sucks. It really sucks. And I felt that a little bit whenever I didn't hear anyone talk about Scum's Wish. And no one talked about The Great Passage except for like maybe one person that we knew.
Yeah. Which that was sad in itself. But
it sucks. It really does. But especially for Princess Principal, which is just such a high bar of quality, I would say, as far as like having consistently hitting on all marks that they needed to hit on. I thought that it's such a shame that nobody's talking about the show.
Yeah, like looking back.
If anybody is listening to this podcast, please go watch the show, please.
Yeah, like seriously, looking back over this season, I'm surprised by how, with every single episode of this show, I feel like you said, it hit everything it needed to hit, and I'm surprised it did it with such like consistency and with such a high degree of actual like, you know, quality and enjoyability to it. Like, there was never an episode that really, I felt, let me down. Like, there was so much variety in how it got set up, and there was, you know, variety in its actual story delivery and its character development and just the different scenarios that it put out, and its balance between like this really cool, like, interesting action that its actual setting allowed, as well as its actual, you know, story progression and plot elements and shit. And, you know, even though some of, you know, well, a decent amount, like the plot aspects were like very predictable in how it would, you know, pan out, like, that wasn't, you know, it wasn't always like the main reason for even watching this. So, like, I'm not watching Princess Principal for like the main overarching like story. Like, I'm watching it for, you know, watching how this core group, like, you know, solves their stuff out, and for some of the, you know, plot lines that are overarching. But yeah, it consistently hit what it needed to.
You almost watch the show for the characters, I would almost like to say, not the overarching story, but just how things happen.
Yeah, the cases.
Yeah, the cases themselves. You don't feel like a detective or anything. You just want to see how the characters respond to the cases that they're given.
Yeah.
And how they manage to interact with each other throughout those cases. It's
very much all about the characters in this show, and I like that. It was it created this very episodic feel to it by doing that, but I didn't think that was in any way. No, yes, exactly. I didn't think it was in any way a detractor. I thought it was fantastic how they approached that, and not to compare something that is like not at all alike in a lot of other aspects, but in that same way, a lot of times I was reminded of Cowboy Bebop in the way that it did its episodic content, where there was technically an overarching idea to the show, but it's very much, this is the plot, this is what's happening, and we're just going to see how our characters react to it.
It's interesting that you say that, because I was reading some Princess Principal responses, and the past couple episodes, people have referred to it as, like, this Cowboy Bebop sort of feel.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting.
I'm surprised that people would say that. I felt like I was going to be the only person that would bring it up.
It's funny because when you said that, because I've definitely seen some comments that have been like that.
Yeah, I think I would typically think most people would try to compare this to Flip Flappers from the same company. And that's still fair as well, because Flip Flappers also did a lot of things where it was like, okay, each time that they enter this world of illusion, it's just seeing how our characters react to what's occurring. And it was very episodic in that way. But Flip Flappers had more of an overarching plot about everything. This one, because it intentionally breaks it up and then intentionally does things out of order, we feel it way more episodic, and I liked that. I thought it worked really well as completed packages each episode.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know a lot of people. It was kind of just interesting because when I was reading those comments about Cowboy Bebop, kind of related to this, kind of not. A lot of people were talking about the problems of Princess Principal, like how they like as we kind of already mentioned, and I mentioned in one of my posts too, the fact that the plot is just not very original. Like, it's stuff that it's not like it has you kind of expect certain things to happen.
Oh yeah.
And so it's not like a my original story or whatever. But people were saying that if Cowboy Bebop aired today, would it kind of garner the same sort of response from the audience?
Honestly, no, I don't think so. I mean, to be fair to Cowboy Bebop, I think it stands on its own as this fantastic thing. But I think in this day and age, the emotions and feelings of like the people that are watching anime now, especially the people that are watching anime with a critical eye, I think that they would appreciate what Cowboy Bebop was doing, but I don't think it would be as hugely celebrated nowadays if it came out nowadays. There seems to be, and maybe this is just me like imprinting on other people what I feel, but I feel like there's a bit of cynicism about things nowadays, that it's hard for a show like Princess Principal or Cowboy Bebop to come out, which is just genuinely optimistic a lot of times, and like it's trying to do just its own thing, and I don't know if that would be as well liked nowadays. Maybe.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out, because they just said that. I thought it was kind of interesting because I'm trying to think of how many shows people regard as masterpieces, quote unquote, today.
Well, although I will say I don't know if I'm entirely correct in thinking that. Because I think a really good comparison would be another show that tried to do the exact same thing as Cowboy Bebop, just with a little bit more humor, Space Dandy, which came out not too long ago.
And it was also made by the same person. And
it came out not too long ago, and the response for that was incredibly well accepted. People loved it for what it did. So I think that that's not entirely fair.
I wouldn't regard it as a masterpiece, though. I don't think the community at large regards it as such.
No, but there's a difference between what Cowboy Bebop was doing in its tone and style and what Space Dandy was doing in its tone and style.
Yeah, and I understand.
At the same time, I do think a lot of people, at least in the Western market that I know of, would regard Space Dandy as a go-to anime for like, hey, I want to watch some good anime. What are ones that you'd recommend? Space Dandy would probably be on a lot of people's lists.
Yeah, I can agree with that. It very much has like the same kind of scope that we're sort of talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Episodic. Each episode is attempting to do something different, and it's more driven by its characters rather than a specific plot.
Yeah. I didn't mean to get off topic. I was just kind of thinking as I was processing things about Princess Principal. So
no, I think that was a good discussion. But yeah. I don't know. To be honest, I don't know. I don't know if I could answer your question because
I mean, I didn't really expect an answer.
Yeah,
so,
sure. But I think it is an interesting thing to think of. Yeah.
I feel like that's a good way to sort of like cap our discussion on Princess Principal as well. Like,
yeah.
I don't necessarily know what more we can say that we haven't already said in like our posts or in what we got in through here, but
yeah, we went really detailed on the post. So if anybody wants to, they're on the backloggers.com website. You can just read those. I will say, as far as like the final wrap up to the series, the last few episodes were a little bit less episodic, and I liked them a lot. I felt that there was a couple of times in which like specifically the very last episode, I felt like the ending was mildly rushed, is what it felt like to me. Like it felt like they should have paid a little bit extra, like a couple of minutes here and there, in order to really emphasize the emotion of this specific scene. But I just wanted it to last a little bit longer to really drive in that emotional impact. But then, outside of that, there was nothing that was really wrong. It hit all the beats, it did everything it was trying to do, and it did it succinctly and successfully. Mm-hmm. So I don't think there's really too many negatives I can say as a wrap up to the show. Yeah. It's a very good show.
Sure.
Very, very good show.
It's kind of interesting. I heard from someone that the specific like series composition writer for this show, they like to leave things open for a season 2. That's just kind of what the writer does.
That's what they like to do. You know what? I'm fine with it. I thought that ending was great. It's like it leaves you with a couple of questions. Like, one of the characters is not a part of England. She's from a different country. What does her government think about the fact that she ran away? But like, she like ran off for just a little bit. But like, besides that, it's like a mild thing, and it's something that you think of after the fact. It's not necessarily something that you're thinking of during the actual scene or the episode.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the ending was just fine. I think it's a good show. I think I put it like a 9, but
and I liked that it started to develop a lot more from what I originally thought it was going to be too. It added some layers to it, especially whenever you find out the backstory for some of the characters. You start to really understand where they're coming from and why they're doing what they're doing. But then you also, on top of those characters, get some backstory for other characters, which kind of flips things a little bit. It makes you think about the previous episodes you've seen, and kind of makes you want to rewatch them to kind of get the hints here and there. I like that they added, on top of everything else that they were doing, they added a little bit of layering to the show.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, it's a good show. Everyone should go and watch that show right now.
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Even if finish the podcast, then watch the show.
I mean, even if it's just like a free trial or something like that you want to try out for like Anime Strike or I guess it's Anime Lab, I would recommend picking up this show as one to try out that service. It's a very good show.
Well, I wonder if it's High Dive actually. I'm not sure. That's that new service.
I think it might be actually.
Oh boy.
More on that in a minute.
Okay. How many more shows were we wanting to talk about here? I don't think there's that many. Like maybe one more that we actually consistently watched all the way through, or at least one of us did.
Well,
I mean, I still have Nanamaru Sanbatsu and Classroom of the Elite.
Okay.
You
can go ahead and do Fastest Finger first if you want.
Yeah, sure. I'll be pretty brief on this one.
There probably isn't much to say.
There really isn't. Nanamaru Sanbatsu, or like...
Fastest Finger first.
Yeah, however you want to go about it. I honestly wasn't initially going to watch this. Like, I kind of panned it initially, and then, Matt, when you talked about it in our, summer season impressions post, the way that you kind of talked about it, being this sort of, kind of like you're watching a quiz game show kind of thing, the way it worked, the way you described it made me really get into it, and I think I ended up finishing it before you did, actually.
Yeah, I still got like 2 episodes to go.
I guess I kind of lied when I said Isekai Shokudou was the only thing that got me wanting to watch an episode like each week. Like, I got really hyped for each new episode of Fastest Finger First. Like,
yeah, I remember there was many a discussion in which you never gave away spoilers, but you're just like, dude, let me talk to you about this.
No, man, like, it's such a fun show, and I mean, to really boil it down, some things I like most about the show is that in some ways, the way in which it actually presents the different, a quiz bowl stuff is really fun. Like, it's got a lot of interesting little tidbits and factoids and how they actually go about doing the quiz structures and the different questions and answers. And, you know, there were a lot of times that I was like, oh, cool, like, that's really neat. I didn't know that. And there were some other times where it was kind of, I think, Matt, as you phrased it, like, it's kind of like playing Jeopardy. It's like, you know, oh, I actually know the answer to that. And so it's kind of fun watching along and seeing, you know, how the characters respond to it and get their questions and answers out and such. And honestly, like, one of the things that makes this so fun for me to watch is that the characters are so very much about this, in that, like, you don't watch a lot of shows where the characters are so, like, deeply passionate and so incredibly expressively joyful about the thing that they're into. And that is exactly what Fastest Finger First is. Like, all these characters, like, you know, in the show are, like, the biggest fucking nerds about Quiz Bowl, and it shows. And, you know, they are consistently, like, overjoyed to, like, swap strategies and things like that. Like, it's kind of the weirdest little sports show that you could ever watch.
So it's kind of like a sports show that has, like, just pure distilled joy and optimism to it.
I mean, in a lot of senses, yeah. Like, I did have, like, I didn't really have many issues with this show. Like, I mean, there were points where it was like, okay, well, I do still really enjoy watching the quizzes, but, you know, even after switching a bunch of stuff up, like, some of it feels stale, but they still are able to get, like, a lot of tension and drama out of it. But, like, yeah. I don't know, there's just one weird thing about it where, like, you know, in that sense, like, that sort of joy carries over to all the characters, but, like, they have one, like, quote-unquote villain kind of character in the show. And I feel like the weird thing about it for me is that it seemed as though they didn't have any interesting way to make this character stand out. Like, you know, this particular character, God, what was their name? God, that's gonna kill me. I don't remember.
I don't know. I just got to those episodes.
Akira.
So I don't know.
Yeah, this character Akira, and, like, you know, he does Quiz Bowl, but he does it because he likes to ruin everyone else's fun. Like, he just sees it as a game. He doesn't get why everyone's so into it. And so he's like, "Yeah, you bunch of fucking nerds." But, like,
did you also ask them for their lunch money after you won?
Well, and to be honest, like, a lot of the characters don't really have a super, like, unique way of standing out. Like, they do a good job of, like, diversifying their personalities and the different schools they come from and such. And so, you know, each character, like, you can kind of get a read on their personality. So
yeah,
the way that they made their villain, like, quote unquote unique was, like, you know, he was a total asshole, but, like, he also like, they made a big deal because he liked to cross-dress and such. And to me, it was weird that they used that as a way of making him stand out as a villain. It's like, oh, this guy's an asshole and he cross-dresses and shit. And it's like, that's just such a weird... awkward.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's such a weird way to, like, vilify a character. That's, like...
I guess that's coming from, like, a cultural oppression of transvestites or something.
Yeah,
like, I don't know, like, why they're doing that as a negative.
I know, it was just weird. It was a small little, you know, thing that just stood out to me. I was like, that's kind of odd, but alright, whatever. Aside from that, like, I don't know, there's not a ton to say about the show. If you have any interest in sort of sports anime in that sense, or even if you don't, I'd really recommend giving the show a go, just because it is genuinely fun to watch each episode. And if you, again, like those kind of, like, Jeopardy kind of things where you're, like, you know, learning little factoids and trivia and such, like, it's just neat to watch. It's good stuff.
That's what you said that sold me on this the last time that we talked about this, was the fact that, like, if you ever have any memories of, like, sitting down and watching Jeopardy or The Price is Right or something like that, and like, just genuinely enjoying the game, watching a game show, then just take that idea, especially if like us, you enjoyed it, like, while sitting down with family. Just take that idea and then just make it a shonen anime, a sports anime specifically, and it's like that enticed me to no end.
Yeah.
The fact that I can have that, I genuinely do get excited about watching certain game shows, and then to have that as just this incredibly optimistic sports anime style sounds very interesting to me.
And I guess the other thing beyond that is like the way that they have developed like some of the main characters and also like character rivalries. You know, there are definitely like the main rival like Mikuriya is, you know, our main character's rival, and Koshiyama is the main character, and like their rivalry is such that, you know, they're definitely both striving to be like the best quiz bowler dude that they can, and there's definitely a gap in skill level there. But you know, even though Mikuriya is, you know, kind of antagonistic in some ways, it's also like this really sort of like low-key supportive, like, hey, like, get better, here's stuff to do to get better, you better get up here, like, get on my level, dude.
So it's like Red and Blue or Gary and Ash.
like essentially, but even in a somewhat less antagonistic way. Like it's almost like a brotherly, like,
instead of saying
sort of
smell
thing.
You later, he's just like, hey, hope to see you later, good boy.
Yeah, like I mean, essentially, and it's just
maybe less creepy than that, but yeah.
Yeah, it like it's it kind of goes back to that thing about like it's nice to watch it in such a way that like these people are so passionate about what they do, in that, you know, even when they are competing against one another, they still want to see each other get better, just like for the love of the thing.
Right, because it just helps everybody out to have like an even better competition.
It's a
kind
friendly
of thing.
Rivalry.
Yeah,
exactly.
Which is really nice to see. It's not like, you know, Idolmaster villain levels. You know, playing chess the wrong way or whatever.
Yeah, like I don't know, like I don't watch a ton of shonen. Yeah, I don't watch a ton of shonen stuff in that sense, but like it really takes off a lot of those boxes of like the things that I really do deeply enjoy about shonen. So
yeah, now we just gotta wait for the anime adaptation of A Spelling Bee.
I don't think that'd be nearly... Well, it could be as exciting.
that could be really cool.
Not going to say that.
Don't knock it.
It'd probably be hard if it's kanji and stuff, but...
Right,
it could be interesting.
Yeah, anyway, they very much left it open for a second season. I would watch a second season in a heartbeat.
I don't know. I wonder how that series gets funded. Like, what kind of people would... I know it's a manga, but, like... It's a manga adaptation, but how do they... I'm trying to think of who would just pump money into that.
We are seeing a bunch of like
the actual like
a production committee. Why would they put money into an anime like that?
Well, like fucking high school quiz bullshit. Like that's huge in Japan. Like it is literally actually a thing. So.
I mean, honestly,
like
it's kind of a like pseudo big thing, at least in the different schools that I've been in growing up. Was like Quiz Bowl. People loved Quiz Bowl.
Yep, and I mean, like, you know, there was a part in, they had, like, this little end-of-episode segment, like, post-credits for each episode, and, like, at the end of one of the last ones, they were talking about, like, hey, like, for real, this weekend, like, the, you know, championship high school quiz bullshit's coming on, get on it and watch it. And so,
that's
like...
super cool. Yeah.
So I was curious when I saw that. That's what kind of spurred that. I was just thinking, like, is this, like... Are there, like, some Quiz Bowl committee that's, like, on the production committee that's funding this? Like,
maybe.
I mean, I don't know. It would make sense.
I don't know all that, but...
But like, you know, the show is genuinely, like, it works in such a way that it is really trying to get people actually interested in Quiz Bowl. And, like, you know, it wasn't like, you know, for me, I want to go out and do it. But I feel like if I was maybe, like, a high schooler or middle schooler or something when I watched this, and, like, my school had a Quiz Bowl team... I might have given it a shot. Yeah, I would at least go check it out. I don't know if I would have gotten anywhere near as invested as these characters do, but it would have done its job in making me want to at least check it out.
Yeah. I remember in high school, this is kind of a little segue, I remember going to like a club kind of, like, you know, where you look at all the clubs and what they do. I remember someone talking about the Quiz Bowl, and I was like, well, that's kind of interesting, but I wasn't, like, invested, like... in it at all. Like, I just looked at it and was like, that's kind of neat. I didn't know that was a thing, and then moved on.
I had some friends in Quiz Bowl, so like while I never had a personal experience with it necessarily, I was always like rooting for them. I was just like, yeah.
But it's just a fun show. If you're looking for something that's like really low stakes, and if you come from that kind of background that likes this sort of stuff, this would be up your alley.
Yeah, I don't understand why there's a lot of people that just are like, ooh, this show is not so good, and then just wrote it off. Never hear about it again.
Like it's kind of like, I think it's in I guess if we're going off Mal, it's in like the 6-ish territory.
It's like 6.7 or something.
It's 6.88, which is like kind of weird to me. Like this isn't like, it's not a bad, like it's not doing any crazy amazing things, but it's not a bad show by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, but again, it's Mal, so
yeah. Again, it is not. That is not gospel.
People need to rate your shows better.
Anyway,
I'm just gonna.
So that's first.
By the end of this podcast, I'm just gonna have everybody on the blacklist, or I'm gonna be on everyone's blacklist. I don't know which. Anyway, let's move on.
So, what was the other one that you had mentioned previously, Zach?
You're talking about Classroom of the Elite.
That's right. Yeah.
Another show I didn't quite get to the end of.
Oh, dude, are you for real?
I'm sorry. I got to like episode 8.
Matt, you're killing me.
Sorry, I went and finished New Game instead. I feel betrayed. I really understand that you should be the one that feels betrayed, but I feel betrayed.
You watched New Game instead. That seems humorous to me.
I mean, you at least got some good tweet chains out of New Game, but...
Yeah, but... I mean,
man,
the second season of New Game was pretty good, but... I still have some complaints about it, but...
Well, do you want to talk about that real quick?
I mean, it'll be really quick. I've kind of already tweeted the thing to death. So New Game is like that show that everyone likes that I hate. Congratulations. And I didn't like the first season of New Game. Did anyone else
Did anybody
else finish it?
I got to episode 8.
Okay. Well, to be honest, the first season is almost not worth finishing.
Really?
It's kind of, I don't want to say it's garbage, but it's like, it's got the animation stuff, but it has problems. It's the first season anyway. It's littered with problems of like fan service, like just unnecessary amounts of it.
Horribly unnecessary fan service. Like the worst part about it was that there was no reason for it at all. Literally zero.
Yeah, and like that was a problem. It was kind of like more of a slice of life anime. It didn't go into the gaming stuff at all. I guess
maybe that was my bad, that I got spoiled by Shirobako, that I thought, oh, girls at work talking about working and dealing within that specific industry. I was like, well, that seems interesting. And then it just wasn't that at all.
It's that's kind of an interesting sort of perspective to look at it. Was New Game aired too close to Shirobako, and that might have panned opinions of that.
I guess, yeah.
But that's kind of another discussion, though. It's interesting, and I'd like to discuss that, but it's not the time.
Yeah.
And so, like, the first season of New Game had all these issues, but then the second season rolled out, and the first episode was kind of like, I'm still lukewarm about it. I actually was not even going to finish the second season. I'm not going to lie. I was going to drop it at 3 episodes if it did not turn itself around. Episode 2 did something. It turned it into more of a work drama. It was really interesting. It was more... The characters were more emotionally vocal about like their feelings on creating games and their role in the industry.
Oh, okay.
And it kind of like their feelings of their passion of creating things, not getting the role they wanted in the workplace, or not being able to live up to their own expectations, or like all this stuff started like building over these over like episodes 2 through like 6.
See,
What
and
the
that's
fuck?
weird.
That sounds nothing like the first
I
season.
know.
Because you're not the only person to tell me that, and I'm like, what the hell? I guess they like looked at the critiques that they got for the first season. They're like, all right, I guess we'll change it, and then they did.
I mean,
Like-
that's and maybe the source material got better. I don't really know.
Yeah, because the second season, just you're not the only one to say that to me, and I'm like, wow, it apparently got better. So, which is just surprising.
Yeah, and over time, like we get some new characters. Which, by the way, one of them's a little shitlord. I had to throw that out there. She gets better, but I still don't like her. Her philosophies are twisted.
I'd seen on Twitter you get real salty about that character.
That was
That's putting it lightly, Kyle.
her personality values like completely conflicted all mine, and it just like it killed me. Anyway, kind of relevant, but not really. But like they introduced these new characters, they got them integrated into the workplace. So then, like, you know, the people we learned about in the first season that were new, they kind of, you know, we kind of got to see them mentor the new people. We got to see some of the current cast like move up levels, you know, get more involved in the workplace. They had different struggles, they had different things to deal with.
Yeah.
And it just became more dramatic as the show went on, which was a lot better. Minus one like episode where it was kind of reminiscent of season 1, which I thought was kind of blah. But besides that, like it was a pretty good sequel, and I was surprised. I didn't actually expect New Game of all things to be something I was like, yeah, I'm gonna finish watching the second season and like it.
Yeah, because I got through most of the first season, and I was just like, this is pretty typical. I don't know. It was very like 5 out of 10, 6 out of 10 material for me, where it's not really doing anything new or unique necessarily.
Yeah. Comparatively, I think I gave the first season of New Game like a 5.5.
Yeah.
And
Damn.
season 2 is like 8. Yeah.
Wow. Really?
Like that's
It's a
a
marked
huge
improvement.
jump. Like there was
it,
a lot
and
more
it,
value
now
to
it sucks because I don't know if I don't want to skip ahead because I assume it's kind of necessary to finish the first season, which is kind of a detriment to the show if you have to finish the first season in order to watch the second season.
To be honest, I don't know if you really have to finish it. Like
I might do it anyways. I was pretty close to the end.
I mean, yeah, if you're that close, maybe. But you could almost like watch the first couple episodes of the first season and then probably skip if you wanted to, because you just need to know the cast before you get into all of this.
And then that's it.
Yeah, like that's kind of the only prerequisite. Just knowing what the characters are. You don't need to know super detail about them. Which kind of makes it interesting. I wonder why they just didn't like do it one season, or
I don't know.
But it could have cut out a lot of the drivel. But whatever. I guess that's not the decision they made, so. New Game. Okay, so I guess I'm a believer in New Game a little bit now.
New Game with the 2 exclamation marks.
Yes, the season 2. Yeah.
Alright.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, how about that?
Yeah.
It's a surprising hit of the season.
Are you ready for a miracle?
Yeah, sure.
What's the miracle?
That you liked it.
Oh, yeah, that was a miracle.
Ready as I can be. Alright, so anything else?
I'm so sad that we're not gonna. Are we gonna talk about Classroom of the Elite, or are we not?
I'm down for talking about Classroom. Wait,
Please do.
hold on. Wait, did we cover? What did we cover? Your
Yeah, that was Gamers, which we kind of tag teamed. But if you want to make it technical, I guess New Game was mine. We could tack that on there too.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter. We don't have a formula for this.
just whatever we ended up watching.
the first episode was like, what is evil? Whatever springs from weakness, or it takes great talent to conceal one's skill or something. Or, man is an animal that makes bargains. No animal does this. No dog exchanges bones with another. Like, that is a single episode title.
Yeah, I remember you talking about that and how, like, it sounded so fucking conceited.
Yeah. It's a light novel adaptation.
But, like, I mean, it's not as edgelord, like, armchair philosopher as it seems to be on the outset. What?
I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was listening to Fall Out Boy.
Oh my god.
You said it's a comedy drama.
Who said it was a comedy drama?
Classroom of the Elite? Am I wrong? I'm sorry.
I might have said that after like 2 episodes, but maybe that's the tags. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think we did.
I only have because I haven't seen it. I've just seen. I haven't seen it. I've just heard what you guys talked about when we first started it. The podcast in the beginning of the summer.
We did talk about it being like a little bit comedic and a little bit dramatic.
Yeah.
And then it kind of ramps up to more dramatic and somewhat less comedic.
Okay. While
still striking a balance.
Yeah, I think.
We'll just talk through. Like, Matt, what'd you get to episode 8? You said
I finished episode 7, which is kind of funny. That's where I stopped and I was caught up to that point, and then sadly, episode 7 is just where I happened to stop. Which episode 7's the pool episode. If you.
Oh, fuck, that's right.
Yeah, which is not a great stopping point, considering that was just happened to where I caught up at, but...
Yeah,
it is what it is.
That was kind of a garbage episode. But, I mean, it's the pool episode.
Yeah,
I mean, what do you expect? So...
It was still okay for a pool episode. It just wasn't great.
Yeah.
It could have been a lot better, but...
It could have.
But that was, like, the only episode of the show that was like that, so...
I think what works most for me with Classroom of the Elite is like just the sheer execution of the premise of the show. We talked about this a bit in our preview episode. If you don't know at this point, it's basically students are put on this self-sustaining island school, and they are cut off from the outside world for their entire tenure there. Everything is determined by points that they get for their respective classrooms. They earn points through competition, through like getting higher grades and shit, and doing different things for their classes.
It's very much a meritocracy, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much in that sense. And I think like it's just sort of the way that the characters interact and sort of like psych each other out in a lot of ways to negotiate and solve a lot of issues is particularly interesting to me. Like, I guess, like, it's hard to talk about the show without going into spoilery specifics.
Okay.
I guess.
Yeah, there's a lot of plot points that are just, they're kind of, if you revealed them, it kind of takes the drama out of the show. There's a lot of twists. There's a lot of underlying stuff that's there, from what I've seen anyway, that kind of makes the show more interesting if you watch it. And of course, if you explain it, it doesn't really add to the drama at all. Yeah. So,
but like, I think particularly what makes this show interesting is probably the considerations of the characters' motivations. Because, even going far into this show, it's hard to really determine, like, why specific characters are doing what they're doing. Like, what sort of ulterior motives do they have going on at the time? Like, it's difficult to trust, in some ways, even the most basic seam of characters, and, why they actually do what they do. So it is very much sort of a bit of a psychological watcher. Not like say,
not like Psycho-Pass levels, but like
but
it's not. It's just you're trying to get into the minds of these characters and how they think about. Everyone's kind of trying to gain an upper hand. Like they're trying to progress as a class, but they're also trying to fulfill their own objectives.
Yeah, and you really got to consider, like, they really do an interesting job of presenting a wide variety of viewpoints and different ways of advancing these agendas, because some characters are much more cooperative in how they try to advance their stuff. Like, they're still trying to get a personal advantage, but they're doing so, by, getting in with others, by becoming likable, and using that likability, for example, as a sense of power, whereas other students try to use a sort of, forceful kind of power, magnetism in that sort of sense to, show superiority. Like, it's really interesting, and it is, in many ways, like just watching a clash of ideologies. If you want to distill it down to that.
Which seems really interesting to me, as at least from all the stuff that you've said. I kind of like that idea. I also like the idea of having a show that every now and then has that kind of mentality of, like, no one is holistically good. They are doing good for the sake of of individual gain. But it doesn't mean that that their actions are, like,
malicious.
Right. They're not necessarily malicious. It's just that their specific strategy involves doing good things.
Mm-hmm.
It's still very much an individualistic show, but there's still cooperation in doing so.
Yeah, it's kind of like it treads a lot of that neutral ground that you would see on, like, I don't know what you call those charts, but it treads a lot of that ground. Yeah,
there's a lot of gray area going on.
D&D alignment charts.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Pretty much, yeah.
Cool. That seems very interesting to me. I assume that the purpose behind this whole academy that these people go to is to kind of develop them for a more politically minded kind of job.
I mean, not necessarily. It's just to sort of pump them up to be, like, the elite of the elite, like, kind of leaders of tomorrow, whether that's in, like, industry or politics or, whatever.
Okay. Then I think my original point of a meritocracy is very much correct then.
Very much so,
okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's interesting. Like, everything that you guys have told me about this previously, like, I sounded like I would probably enjoy the show. It's just, I just didn't get around to watching it.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I'm kind of really sad I didn't get to finish it. I'll finish it later.
Yep, that last arc is pretty good.
That's what I've heard. The last arc is apparently a killer, which is awesome.
It's fantastic. I super recommend getting around to it.
Cool.
Nice. I'll have to do that later this week.
Yep.
Well, anything else?
Yeah.
Because I think that wraps up about all the shows that we finish this season.
Yeah. I'll make one last comment to say go watch Recreators, but since it's done now.
That's right. Yeah, we hadn't talked about that previously because we wanted to wait until it ended.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one, and I assume I didn't get to it, but I assume the last few episodes of Soccer Quest are fantastic.
Yeah, I was kind of waiting until that ended, and I am getting prepped to binge watch that sometime soon.
Right, yeah. And Recreators, Matt, you said was just fantastic through and through. Like, it was a very good show.
There's like minimal problems. People are still really mad about the amount of info dumping there was, but that's just, it is what it is. But that's literally the only major complaint that's carried throughout the entire show.
It's impressive.
Yeah.
Like, that's really impressive.
Yeah, if after 20 some episodes, the only major complaint is just one thing, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's definitely worth watching, though. I think everybody should watch Recreators.
Cool. Okay. Well, I'll definitely get around.
It is the Evangelion of our generation.
Oh, fuck off. Please, no.
I'm a little bummed to see this season go, just because of, like, how much good stuff there actually was, and
this was a great season. Yeah. It's Once again, it's very surprising because not 2 years ago, I was like, hey, what's coming out in summer? Nothing? All right.
Time for backlog.
Right, but no, like now it's consistently every season there are just really fantastic shows coming out.
Yep. Like I'm kind of looking ahead to this upcoming fall season, and I'm a little bummed because it doesn't seem like there's as much as that I'm gonna want to watch, but we'll see.
But the ones I do want to watch, I really want to watch.
Mm-hmm. So we'll see. I am cautiously optimistic.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that when the time comes. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of words.
Oh, yes.
I got words for these shows. All right, anything else, I guess?
I think I'm good.
No, I'm done.
Cool. I guess we'll see everybody next time then. Bye.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.